Welcome to a special episode of View the Right Thing.
This time around, Wes and Steve review their show's namesake with Spike Lee's Oscar-nominated 1989 breakout hit, Do the Right Thing.
Thank God we got that cleared up.
And now, from a living room in sunny Burbank, California, this is View the Right Thing.
It's about time you found something to do to enrich your lives.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of
Indiana Jaws.
Damn you. Of View the Right Thing.
Oh, we did that won the vote.
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody draw our mascot yet.
Our mascot of a shark wearing a leather jacket and a fedora.
I don't think he's in leather. I think he's just a fedora holding a bullwhip. I think
Holding a bullwhip in his teeth.
I think the leather jacket might be too much.
We'll see.
He could have the satchel. I wouldn't mind the satchel over his head and under one of the fins, maybe.
All right.
I'd be all right with that.
So we're going to draw Indiana Jaws as the mascot for our podcast, View the Right Thing.
Yeah, well, there's a motorcycle going by outside. So we're doing this special episode.
That's right, a very special, our titular episode.
Yeah.
It's titular.
Titular. Yeah.
This is our titular episode.
So we decided that if we picked a title that had a movie reference in it, we would watch that movie or movies. Fortunately, there was only one movie in the title that... yeah. So we're going to talk about that movie, which is Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee.
That's right. It's a Spike Lee joint, if you remember.
Spike Lee joint from 1989.
Yeah.
So before we get going, I just want to say thanks to Dwayne for doing another intro for us. You are fantastic. And we want to talk about something. We, once a month, are going to pick a user submission.
That's right, users.
At least one of us hasn't seen.
I'd call them listeners.
What did I say, user?
You said users.
Yeah, they just use
this
us,
isn't Tron.
throw us away. It's Tron.
This is Tron?
We're all in the Matrix, man. Okay, so we're not.
I don't know if we are.
So, listeners, we're going to take one listener submission. You can submit a list, and we'll pick one. Or you can just submit one, but if we've both seen it, it's not going to get in the Muppet Bucket. But we're going to add a movie to the Muppet Bucket. So the first one we're ever going to add in is someone you know.
Yes, it was suggested by my friend Fillery.
Fillery.
The only one I know.
The only Fillery. I've never heard that name before, so I guess...
It's like Hillary, but with a P before the H.
I think it was an F, wasn't it?
Shh.
Okay.
I don't want creeps looking her up.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So, the movie that we picked...
is the last... No, it's not the last anything.
No.
It's the first. Should I say it, or do you want to say it?
Do you remember what the movie is?
I sure do. It's from 2010. It's got Casey Affleck. I almost said Affleck.
It's got Casey Affleck in it?
Pretty sure it was Casey Affleck when I just looked it up.
I'm interested in this movie. I don't know anything about it, so...
It's got Casey Affleck, Jessica Alba, and Kate Hudson, and it's called The Killer Inside Me.
Jessica Alba.
J. Alba.
Interesting.
Jalba.
You don't see her very often these days.
Well, I mean, she's a mom, and she's starting her own companies and all this stuff. Yeah, 5 years ago. I didn't look up, when I looked it up, I did not double check to see if it's based on the book of the same name.
Okay.
But we'll find out. I have a feeling it is, but I won't say why.
Okay. Fair enough.
I have a feeling it's based on the book, thanks to a lyric by the Dead Milkmen.
All right.
What should we talk about, Wes? Should we talk about Mookie and Sal's Famous Pizza?
I think so. I don't
Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn?
We really have much else to talk about. We just did a podcast last week.
Have you seen a movie since then?
Have I seen, like, in the theater? No,
yeah,
I have not.
I did.
What'd you see?
I went to a special screening with a Q&A of The End of the Tour, starring Jason Segel and Jesse Eisenberg. Mm-hmm. Have you not heard of The End of the Tour? Mm-mm. Oh, wow.
Wait, he's playing... Jason Segel, he gained some weight and like has long hair in it?
Yeah, he's playing David Foster Wallace, author of Infinite Jest.
Okay.
Which was a hugely successful book. It's funny, Segel made this same joke at the Q&A. He when he was preparing to be in the movie, he went and bought a copy of Infinite Jest.
Mm-hmm.
And he says he took it up to the counter at the bookstore, and the girl behind the counter, who was like kind of a punkish kind of, very 20-something happening kind of girl, looked at it and just rolled her eyes and went, "Every dude I've ever dated has an unread copy of Infinite Jest on his coffee table," or something like that.
That's funny.
I thought that's a pretty funny story. But so now that I've seen the movie and loved it, now I have to go read the book because I haven't read a book since I got a smartphone.
Can you shortly, with spoiler-free, summarize what the movie's about?
The movie is about David Foster Wallace going around on his book tour to promote Infinite Jest and do signings and all that sort of thing. Because the book just caught fire, just kablooey. Everybody was talking about it, talking about how brilliant it was. And so Jesse Eisenberg plays a different guy named David. He plays David Lipsky from Rolling Stone. And he hears about this, and he realizes, whoa, we're Rolling Stone. We cover music. We cover movies. When's the last time we covered a book? Way too long ago. Mm-hmm. So he convinces, his higher-ups to send him along with Wallace for the end of the tour to get an interview out of him, spend a few days with him, really see what makes this brilliant man who wrote this hugely successful book that's over 1,000 pages that everybody seems to be reading, what makes this guy tick. And it's just a lot of very funny stuff, a lot of very touching stuff, and it's just these two men sort of going through this experience together. It's I was about to say it's a wild time. It's not exactly wild, but it's enjoyable, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think you'll enjoy it.
Well, I look forward to seeing it at some point.
Cool. And, of course, there's Oscar buzz and all that sort of jazz going around for it.
Oscar buzz for Jason Segel?
Yeah.
Wow, good for him.
Possibly even Eisenberg. But I forget. He wasn't at the Q&A, so he didn't mention any Eisen buzz. He didn't mention any Oscar buzz because he wasn't there to mention anything.
Yeah.
What can you do? And there are also two happy dogs running around in the movie. They're a lot of fun.
I spoke to Jason Segel once.
You did?
Yeah.
What did he say? Anybody want a peanut?
No, I spoke to him at the Muppet premiere.
Oh, cool.
The Muppets.
Yeah.
And that dude really, that guy really cared about that movie, really cared about
Absolutely.
the Muppets. It was a labor of love for him, and it was really important to him that the fans, that he did a service to the fans and to Jim Henson.
I'm going to go ahead and say he did.
Of course, yeah. That movie felt a lot like the original Muppet movie.
Yeah, you feel the love in that movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Did he have anything to do with Muppets Most Wanted?
He did not, from what I understand.
Well,
same director,
touché.
And Brett McKenzie came back and did music for it. But Jason Segel wasn't in on that one. Unfortunately, I think it suffered a little bit.
Yeah.
I think because of that, didn't quite have the same heart. But they're sort of, at least it seems like maybe they're following a similar pattern.
All right.
To the original releases. So, the original Muppet movie is about finding out your place in the world and like moving to Hollywood to make it in show business.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's going on in the Muppets. Walter moves to Hollywood essentially to find his place. He doesn't really belong with Jason Segel and Amy Adams.
Yeah, he realizes he himself is a Muppet.
Is a Muppet, yeah. And so he goes and does that, and it has a really similar feel to that first film. And then the second of the original Muppet films is The Great Muppet Caper.
That's right.
Which is a heist movie and about stealing jewels.
Yeah.
And then we have Muppets Most Wanted, which also is a heist movie about stealing jewels.
Right.
So, maybe we'll see a movie that takes place in New York next with rats that run a diner.
Muppets Take
Manhattan was the original.
Right. I was trying to come up with a different neighborhood.
Oh, a different M?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Another M neighborhood in New York. There's got to be one.
New Yorkers, let us know.
Yeah. Tweet at Stephen No Howood or Movie Hippo. Let us know the other M neighborhood in New York. Let's talk about New York, specifically Brooklyn. Specifically Bed-Stuy.
That's a pretty good segue.
I agree.
Muppets to Spike Lee.
From Muppets to Do the Right Thing.
All right. So let's talk about sort of the episode and why, it's important to us.
Sure.
So for me at least, I felt like it was important because the film is important. So it was important for me to talk about it because I think the movie's important. But I also wanted to clarify something.
All right.
I love our new podcast name.
Yeah.
View the Right Thing. I think it's clever.
Sure.
I think it's a little funny.
Yeah.
And I think it represents pretty well what it is we're trying to do. We're trying to watch all those movies that we're supposed to watch.
Right. Agreed. But
I want to also reassure people who are sensitive to film history, as well as people sensitive to racial issues. I don't want to speak on behalf of both of us, but I have a feeling you're probably in the same boat. But I have a reverence for this film.
Sure.
I think it's important socially as well as for film history. We didn't choose the title of our podcast to poke fun at this film.
Right, not by any means.
Or because we don't care about the film.
Right. I love this movie. I've watched it probably once a year since I was like 10.
Wow. That's a lot. Old man.
Well, it came out when I was 10, and I like it. I'm going to revisit it.
So I feel like I could say I could probably say for both of us that we're proud to have this reference in our show title.
Yeah.
So just wanted to clarify that and just kind of start out on the right foot and say, we do revere this film as a piece of film history and as a cultural. I can't lost the word. I don't want to say phenomenon, but it's cultural.
Milestone.
Well, it has cultural importance, and
absolutely,
and I think it's important that we recognize that we understand that. So this movie is 26 years old.
Wow.
And I feel like it's just as important today as it was 26 years ago. And, maybe even more so now. With how many headlines we have regarding similar situations as the plot of this film.
Right. I can fully agree with that.
I think another difference because of what's going on in our country right now with police and racial tensions, I think more people are talking about race in America than they have since the Civil War.
Right.
I think, obviously,
maybe not since the Civil War.
Well, I mean,
but certainly in a
60s,
long time.
But I mean, I think more people are vocally speaking about it. Maybe not behind closed doors necessarily. I think in the 60s, definitely people were talking about it behind closed doors, and there was obviously a great civil rights movement.
Right.
But it wasn't. They didn't have access to the media in the way that we have it now.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think it's much more prevalent now, and I feel like it's more in people's minds than it ever has been.
All right.
So I don't want to get too into like a political or racial debate on the podcast, but you can't really discuss this movie without you can't discuss it in a serious way without addressing the sort of rampant inequalities that our country still has today.
I mean, I bet if anybody can discuss it without doing that, we could.
I mean, we could just go through the plot and call it the end of the day, but I think it's important and mostly responsible for us to talk about subtext and what it really means, and at least to us.
Yeah.
That's my take.
All right.
So, in addition to the movie, we'll talk about the effect that Spike Lee had and the movie had on Hollywood as well, because I think that's really important. Because we do this podcast because we love movies.
Right.
And that's probably why most people are listening, is because they love movies. So I think it's important to talk about how this film and Spike Lee have had a profound effect on Hollywood for the better.
Yeah.
So let's get into it.
Yes, let's. Where do you want to start? Should we start with fighting the power?
Sure, you fight the power.
I feel like I'm shouting.
All right.
If you've never seen Do the Right Thing, you're in for a treat, because it opens with a one-woman dance video.
Dance party, yeah.
You've got the lovely Rosie Perez in maybe her first role. Definitely early in her career.
Yeah.
She was a fly girl for In Living Color right around when this happened. Mm-hmm. But here she is, opening the film, dancing to Public Enemy's Fight the Power. Tremendous song. Comes up a lot in this movie. And I thought that was a pretty bold way to open a movie, you know. Now, nowadays, you go to a movie, you sit through 10 to 15 minutes of preview, and then the movie just starts.
Right.
But this is one of those movies that still exists in the long opening credits
Yeah. Almost,
era.
Yeah. Like they used to have like an orchestra.
Yeah. Like some of the movies we've watched have
bunch of title cards.
really long opening credits.
Maltese Falcons, good
Right.
example. Or North by Northwest, I think, maybe
Yeah.
had quite a bit of opening credits.
And then they get to the closing credits, and they just like run down the cast list, and
Copyright.
that's it. Yeah, like what is it, Willy Wonka? I think the closing credit scroll on that movie, on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, is like 40 seconds long. Like it's literally just the cast, and it's done.
That's
I thought
awesome.
that was pretty hilarious. So this movie, being of the era of long opening credits, plays the entirety of Public Enemy's Fight the Power, while Rosie Perez does a bunch of different dance moves in various outfits, and it sort of lets you know, I mean, Fight the Power.
Yeah, the boxing outfit's my favorite.
Sure. And it's like, you know, it's letting you know you're in for something. This isn't going to be a movie about a guy who just delivers pizzas all day.
Right.
Otherwise, we'd play, you know, I don't know, I Can't Drive 55. This is Fight the Power. Something's about to happen.
Indeed.
We go to Mr. Senor Love Daddy,
Love Daddy.
played by Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
He is a radio DJ who sits in a first-floor radio studio with a big window looking out over the neighborhood. Plays a lot of great tracks. What does he call it? Not the discs. Playing the platters that
The
truly
platters.
matter. Something
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And he sort of opens the film, talks about how it's going to be a really hot day in Bed-Stuy, talks about...
Well, here's the first.
You know.
Here's the first line of the movie, and it's probably one of the most important, if not the most important line of the
Which
film.
is that line?
Wake up,
Yeah.
up you wake. Which is a message
Right.
to the neighborhood.
Right.
And, you know, obviously it's the beginning of the day, so it makes sense literally, but it's also kind of figurative for the whole film. And it turns out to be very, very important.
And then he also, in that same monologue, says, black is the color of the day, so wear some black to absorb this heat
Yeah.
so that you've got heat to get you through the winter,
Right.
which I don't think that's how it works. But I get you. But then he says, something else about, like, so wear some black to absorb some heat because the heat is going to rise. It's going to rise up.
Yep.
And that right there is, like,
Yeah.
certainly a foreshadowing
Of the neighborhood.
metaphor. Yeah.
Well, and he talks about the yin and the yang in that opening sequence as well, which is
Yeah.
also important. You're going to see that theme show up quite a bit. The movie's definitely got a love and hate motif going on.
Well, for sure.
And so that yin and yang thing comes up quite a bit. And I think the funny comment about, you know, soak up all the heat is a subtle reference to, hey man, your heat may not be on in the winter.
No, yeah.
You know,
Interesting.
these are not well-to-do people
Yeah.
in this neighborhood, with the exception of a brief appearance of a guy from Boston.
John Savage. That was John Savage
John
from The
Savage.
Deer Hunter. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In a Larry Bird t-shirt.
A Larry Bird t-shirt. And he's really inconsequential. We won't talk much about him when it comes up, but when his scene comes up, we'll just kind of ignore that. But he bought the brownstone that
Right.
he's living
He
in.
owns a building in this movie.
Right.
Most of these other nice people are renting. Although I think Mama's sister Mama,
She's a landlord.
yeah, she mentions that she's got tenants.
Yeah, so she maybe owns a building, or maybe she works for somebody who owns a building.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say because they don't really go into that very much. But she does mention being a landlady.
Mama's sister. It was Mama's sister, right?
Sister Mama, I think.
It was Sister Mama
Sister-
first? I'm
Sister-
looking it up.
Sister
I
Mama.
could have sworn it was Mama's sister.
Sister Mother. He's looking it up.
I'm looking
So
it up.
he talks about the yin and yang, and that's going to come up quite a bit. Well, not specifically yin and yang, but sort of that balance is going to come up quite a bit. Spike Lee is introduced into the film, and he plays Mookie,
Right.
a young 20-something living in Brooklyn with his sister.
Mother sister.
Mother
not
sister.
Mama sister. Mother sister.
Mother sister. So he lives with his sister, and the first time that we see him, he's counting money.
Right.
And that's also very important because we, through the course of the film, learn that the thing that drives him more than anything else is money.
Right.
The one goal he wants is to get money. The whole reason he's working is to get money. And the whole reason he's just trying to make it through the end of the day is to get money.
Yeah.
He works as a delivery man at a local pizzeria owned by Sal.
Right.
Sal is played by Danny Aiello. Sal has 2 grown sons working with him.
Vito and Pino.
Pino, yeah. Pino is openly racist.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically towards blacks.
Yeah, he's not a fan of Mookie at all. And they get into the discussion about Eddie Murphy and Prince and
yeah, we'll come back to that.
Magic Johnson later, but yeah.
So
Pino.
Vito, as you mentioned, is his younger brother,
Right.
and he seems to be kind of the polar opposite of Pino. And from the moment they appear on screen, they seem to be at odds with each other.
Yeah.
So much so that once they get into work, and we've established these people, they wear opposite color shirts for almost the entire film.
That's true, huh?
Yep. So Pino, different from his father, who seems for the most part to be very lenient and open-minded and not really so much racist.
Right.
And Vito, who also is not racist.
Right.
They both wear black shirts, and Pino wears a white shirt almost the entire film. And when we get closer into the film, we'll bring up the change. And the film kind of bounces around the block to introduce us to various characters and giving us their states of mind. The local drunk is referred to as the mayor.
Oh, yeah. Played by Ozzie Davis?
Yeah, Ozzie Davis.
It is Davis, right?
Man, that guy, I feel like that guy has only been old. I've only seen that man old.
Wow. Yeah, I can't think of a time when I've ever seen footage of a young Ozzie Davis.
Yeah. So the mayor is initially looked down on and kind of pitied by the viewer when you first see him. He's clearly in dirty clothes. His suit is threadbare, like it's very tattered.
Yeah.
He shows up to the pizzeria and he's asking if there's any work, and they give him, he picks up a broom and is like, you're going to have the cleanest sidewalk in the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
And of course that's the job that nobody wants to do in the film.
Which I don't know why not. Now they do only pay him $1 to do it.
Yeah. But that's the $1 that buys him a beer.
True. I guess so.
So you kind of feel bad for this guy and you kind of pity him, but by the end of the film, your feelings about this guy are going to kind of change because he seems to be sort of the one or two voices of reason.
All right.
In the film. And his first real scene on the block, when he gets to we see him briefly in his bed. But when his first real scene and he gets to the pizza place, he says that he loves everybody.
Right.
Which is another example of love early on in the film. They're trying to love. We love radio. I love everybody. So on.
Right.
Then we meet the landlady, mother sister.
Yes. Played by Ruby Dee. Rest in peace.
So she pretty much watches the day mostly from her window.
Yeah.
She does venture out on the steps, and at the end of the film, she walks out into the street. But for most of the movie, she's watching from her window. We meet Radio Raheem. He walks pretty much in circles around the block. That's what it seems like. I mean, you're just constantly seeing this guy walking around and interacting with different people.
Right.
But this movie mostly takes place in like a couple block radius.
Right.
So,
but he's a respected member of the community.
Everybody knows him.
He carries a very large boombox.
Yep.
That requires 20 D batteries.
And it's something that
which is a lot of batteries.
It is. It's something that he clearly spent money on because they refer to him as like living large, essentially, and it's technologically more advanced than any other stereo radio boombox that we see in the film.
There's even a boombox battle at one point.
There's a boombox battle.
His clearly wins, and it's always playing Public Enemy's "Fight the Power."
The entire film, anytime you see him, "Fight the Power" is being played, and that is incredibly important to the film.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about that at the very end of the film as well. At the end of this, then there's a mentally disabled person named Smiley.
Oh yeah, Smiley, He's the second person we see, isn't he?
Yeah, we see him pretty early on.
I feel like it opens with the DJ.
Yeah.
And then the very next person we see is Smiley with his pictures.
Yeah. So just to kind of go over why the order that I'm telling it a little bit out of order, just because I'm trying not to go over every detail like we have in some of our past podcasts, just because I want to keep this to be as closer to a mini podcast as episode.
Good luck.
Yeah, I got a lot.
There's
got
a lot to talk about in this movie.
Yeah. So there's some plot things that I'll probably say a little bit out of order. It doesn't really matter what order they happen necessarily. As that we just talk about that they happen. So Smiley attempts to sell a photo of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. They're shaking hands and smiling in this photo.
Yeah.
He's colored it by hand, like the borders and stuff. And he tries to sell that thing to everyone he meets. And he sells a couple.
Yeah. It seems like he just walks around all day selling various pictures.
Yeah.
Because he runs into Mookie, and Mookie's like, no, not that one. I want the other one. I'll give you $2 for the other one. So.
Yeah.
Maybe he's got a bunch of pictures from the civil rights movement that he just tries to sell to
I actually got the feeling
make some kind of money.
I actually got the feeling that they were all the same picture with different colors on them.
Oh, interesting.
And that Mookie was like kind of placating him a little bit to like, yeah, you have worth. Oh yeah, you're an artist or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That not this one but the other one. I think that's what I got more out of it. I never saw a different photo.
True.
And the photo shows up in the end credits as well. So I think it's the same photo.
So maybe he's just got like 100 prints of that photo.
I think he
does different art stuff on it and then sells it.
Yeah, I don't think they were like photographs. I think they were like photocopies of a photograph too.
Huh.
So it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean they held up pretty well in that fire hydrant scene.
That's true, but who knows if maybe he went home and got more.
Maybe.
So, moving on. A friend of Mookie's, Bugging Out.
Yes.
Played by Giancarlo Esposito.
You say Giancarlo, not Giancarlo?
Giancarlo?
I would say Giancarlo.
Okay. Well,
we'll arm wrestle for it.
Okay.
Wes won.
He comes into Sal's to order a slice of pizza, and Sal gives him kind of a hard time about cheese and how it costs extra.
Yeah.
Adding extra cheese is more than the cost of a slice of pizza.
Yeah, that was very alarming. I don't remember that from a kid, but yeah, the slice was $1.50, and he says extra cheese is $2.
You're right.
That seems crazy.
Well, I think the idea is that he's trying not to do like essentially special orders for anyone except for one person who we meet later in the film. Pretty much,
right? That
would be Mookie's sister. I mean, we meet her briefly at the very beginning, but she comes into Sal's later, and we see that she's the one person Sal would make changes for.
Yes, Sal definitely has an affinity for Mookie's sister Jade.
So, yeah, Bugging Out goes to sit down to eat his piece of pizza, and he looks up at Sal's Wall of Fame. And he notices that all of the people on the Wall of Fame are white Italians.
Right.
And so he complains and demands...
Travolta.
De Niro's up there. Pacino's up there. Yeah.
We get close-ups on all those guys.
So Bugging Out demands that Sal add some people of color. He demands that there's some black people added to the wall, and Sal basically gives him the whole, it's my place, I can put what I want up there, you want black people on the wall, go buy your own place.
Fair enough.
And they argue, and Sal kicks Bugging Out.
Well, he has Mookie do it, too.
Yeah, he says, get your friend out of here.
Yeah.
And so Mookie goes out and kind of talks Bugging Out down a little bit.
There was a really awesome shot at this point.
Yeah, that goes through the door.
Yes. Yeah, they follow them
through the screen door.
Inside the restaurant, out the screen door. The door closes, and we're still seeing
the camera
them.
moves through the screen door.
It's pretty rad.
Yeah, it's a pretty great shot. I assume they have somebody hiding down there to remove the screen.
Well, yeah, maybe, but it seemed like it was that maybe they just were so zoomed in that
the screen wasn't
noticeable. Screen just
Yeah.
blurred out or something.
Yeah, generally that would diffuse it. I mean, I think it would be noticeable in some way, but maybe not. To me, it felt like the camera actually went through.
Yeah.
Physically went through that opening of the window. But either way, it was a really great shot. It's really great that you point that out.
It was great. And then they even come back from it as well.
Yes, they do. And the screen's back.
Wild. That's right. Well,
they cut away. They actually cut away before you see the screen.
Oh,
before they come back.
Huh?
Yeah.
Huh. I feel like the screen was definitely there.
Well, we can go back and watch it sometime. In a year, we'll go back and watch it and check
All right.
So, out on deliveries throughout the day, Mookie has several different important encounters.
Yes.
One, I think the earliest one, has him stopped by the mayor.
The mayor, yes.
Yeah. Who tells Mookie he has to tell him something very important.
Yeah.
And he tells Mookie...
Always do the right thing.
Do the right thing.
And I actually thought there was something really... There was a lot being said in that moment. Because Mookie, he's very much his own guy. The first thing he does when he walks out of his apartment in the morning is these people come up trying to like give him information about something, and he's just like, no way in hell, and just storms on past him.
Yeah.
But then walking down the street, he just hears the mayor from off to the side just say, Mookie, kind of not loudly at all.
Right.
And he knows he's got to stop and talk to the mayor.
Right.
And I feel like that says a lot about who the mayor is and Mookie's respect for him as well. Because Mookie's clearly, he's shown like, I'm not going to put up with any of this nonsense. But he stops dead in his tracks for the mayor.
Right, and there's a couple times where the mayor talks to a younger person and sort of gives them advice or some sort of sage wisdom.
Yeah.
One time is he's talking to a guy who's calling him a drunk or a hobo, and he kind of lets loose on the kid a little bit and says, you don't know my life. You don't know what it's like. Four kids, but one in particular is sort of harassing him. And he's like, you don't know what it's like to watch, not even be able to give your children bread to eat and watch them go hungry and stuff. So that's one encounter. But this other encounter is with Mookie, where he tells him to always do the right thing, and he gives him this sort of fatherly advice.
Right.
And I think that's important because Mookie isn't really a grown-up at this point in the film. He's an adult.
He's a father.
But he's not around for that kid.
Right.
His girlfriend, who's taking care of the baby,
Tina,
hasn't seen him in 4 days.
Right.
So, he's not really taking care of the things that he needs to take care of. So he's an adult, but he's not really a grown-up.
Yeah, he's not exactly a man yet.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we see the mayor give him this piece of advice.
Huh. All right.
So Mookie writes it off initially, the whole do the right thing. He just kind of rolls his eyes and moves on. But by the end of the film, we're going to see Mookie try to stand up and take that advice in a way. It doesn't go super well, but we'll get there.
Part of me wonders, has anybody in this movie done the right thing?
Well, I think the mayor does.
The mayor does, for sure, but it's almost like everybody's antagonizing everybody in this movie.
Yeah, I think at times everybody sort of does the right thing at some point.
I sure hope so. But then there's just so much just like breaking each other's balls.
Yeah.
And just giving each other a hard time about this, that, and the other thing.
Sure.
And for the most part, it's harmless, It never gets violent. But it's just like everybody's just digging at each other nonstop.
So let's put it this way. I think everybody tries to do the right thing as they understand it.
Yeah.
And I'll expand on that at the end. I don't want to jump to the end of the plot too early, okay? But yeah, I think people are trying to do the right thing the whole film, but their version of what doing the right thing is different. For example, I'll give you one example. Pino, who's almost completely an unlikable character the whole film.
Yeah.
Has a conversation with his father about leaving the neighborhood.
Right.
We should go open a place in our neighborhood where we have our people. We're not around these people because these people are animals. Now, we know that he's not doing the right thing, but in his mind, he's trying to say, this is the right thing for us to do because these people don't want us here.
Huh.
So I think the characters do try to do the right thing, but it's their perception of what the right thing is.
All right.
So
Never thought about it that way.
On another encounter, Mookie meets up with Raheem.
Yeah, Radio Raheem.
With
his giant boombox.
And these brass knuckle type rings.
Right.
That have words on them. The words are...
On the right hand is love, and on the left hand is hate.
So we have this love-hate battle motif, this yin and yang thing going on again.
Yeah.
And he delivers this whole speech right at the camera about how powerful hate is.
Right.
And how hate can just beat you down. But love always has the ability to
Right.
come back and beat out hate. And again, going to be important later. There's a lot that's
Sure.
like they drop a lot of hints and they drop a lot of information that is going to be important later on. Back at the restaurant, Mookie and Pino, who don't like each other,
No.
have an interesting discussion about race because Pino drops the N-bomb.
Right.
And Mookie's like, come over here. And they go lean on the cigarette machine. He's like, come talk to me. And he says, Mookie basically points out this double standard that Pino has.
Yeah.
And he's like, who's your favorite basketball player? And he's like,
Magic Johnson.
Magic Johnson. Who's your favorite actor?
Eddie Murphy.
Who's your favorite singer? And so Mookie answers for him and says it's Prince.
Yeah.
And he's like, no.
No, it's Bruce.
It's Bruce Springsteen.
It's definitely Bruce.
And then ultimately, by the end of the conversation, you understand that Mookie's right. It is Prince.
Right.
And he's like, well, why aren't they the N-word?
Yeah.
And he says, they're more than black, so they don't count. This idea that because they don't live in the neighborhood,
Right.
because they've gone out and done something that's, easily attainable by white people.
What he's saying
Or
is they're
dominantly
rich and
attainable.
famous. So
Well, and that they've risen to the standard of,
Right.
of white people. And so they're more than black.
Pino's saying that.
Pino, not Mookie.
Not us.
Not us. Absolutely not
We
us.
are quoting the movie here.
So then Mookie gets called over during this at the tail end of this discussion.
Yeah.
Because there's another delivery, and he looks at the address, and he's like, "Are you sure you got the right address? Because sometimes you send me to the wrong address." And the guy's like, Sal's like, "Of course I gave you the right address." Mookie recognizes this address, and when he arrives, the door opens, and we find it is his girlfriend
Tina, played by Rosie Perez.
Yeah. And also the mother of his son, of course.
Right.
And she feels like this is the only way she's going to be able to see Mookie because she hasn't seen him in days. And he keeps like, yeah, I'll come around. I'm so busy. I'm trying to earn money. As he keeps telling her, I'm trying to earn money. I'm earning money. That's why I'm gone so much.
Right.
And he does work the whole day. He works into the night. They have this kind of like sweet and intimate scene with each other. First he's like, let's do the nasty.
He's trying to get
I think is what he says. Let's do the nasty. And she's like, no, it's too hot.
Right.
And if I do that, you're going to leave and you're not going to come back for days. I won't see you for days. And so ultimately, she doesn't give in. And he's like, you trust me, right? And she's like, trusting you is how we got a kid.
Yeah.
But,
Last time
yeah.
I trusted you, we wound up with a kid.
So he gets her to take her clothes off.
Yeah.
And he goes to the icebox. And he sees his son for the first time, that we see him see the son for the first time in the film.
Right.
And he kisses the kid on the head. And he gets some ice cube trays. And then we see him rub ice cubes like on her forehead and her shoulder, like kind of all over her body in different places. We see all these different shots. And it's sexual, but it's not salacious. It's actually a very sweet and kind of tender scene where he's like, thank God for the kneecaps. Thank God for the elbows.
For the nipples, for the thighs, for
and
for the lips.
And he's taking care of this woman, and he doesn't push it further on to sex, where I think typically in a scene like that, that's probably where this goes, but he doesn't. And
agreed.
The way it sort of ends is this really nice close up of both of their lips, both of their mouths, and they're talking to each other.
Right. Yeah,
and
we pretty much just see their noses and mouths.
Yeah, and it's like very, very softly lit, and I think it's the first sign that Mookie is growing up. And that he promises to come back.
Yeah.
Later. So Mookie goes back to work. He's finally about to get paid at the end of the evening. And he's going to go home. And these four young people that we see throughout the film earlier, they show up and they ask to be let in for some pizza. And Mookie's like, no, we're closed. I need my money. I want to go home. And Sal gives in and lets them come in. And while they're waiting, Buggin' Out shows back up.
Yep.
And he has recruited Radio Raheem and Smiley to his like boycott Sal's thing.
Yeah.
And they show up at the end of the night and they demand that Sal add black people to the wall, and they're yelling and screaming. And the radio is up on the counter and it's blaring, "Fight the power. Fight the power. Fight the power."
Yeah.
So I want to go back to the love-hate motif.
All right.
Hate has all the power in this film. You're talking about how people are breaking balls of people constantly in this, and everybody's on edge, and it's really, really hot. And even though the DJ, Sam Jackson, is like trying to feed us love, and the mayor is trying to feed us love, he has maybe a thing for mother sister.
Oh, he absolutely does.
And he at one point rescues a kid from getting hit by a car. There's a lot of love going on.
And then that kid's mom smacks the hell out of him.
But and that's important. I think, and I was going to come back to that in a little bit, but let's talk about it now. So he rescues this kid from getting hit by a car, and the mom smacks the crap out of him. He's like, you don't have to beat your son. And she's like, don't tell me how to raise my kid. She gets mad at him, right?
Yeah.
Hate is everywhere in this film. Pino hates black people. Sal hates young people, it seems.
Most of the neighborhood hates Radio Raheem's music.
Yeah.
But they love him.
Right. They hate the heat. They
hate the heat.
Don't like the cops. They hate the cops. There's a really interesting... There's 2 slow motion scenes.
Yeah.
Or shots in the movie. And one is when police roll by in their car and they're looking at...
Sweet Dick Willie and
yeah, Coconut
Jim, I think.
Yeah, and one other guy. And they're both groups are eyeing each other with just complete and utter hate and disdain, and both utter the words "what a waste."
Yeah.
And the other slow motion shot is when Jade comes to visit Sal, and Sal's like, "Oh, I'll make you something special," and all of a sudden he's like a completely different human being. Right.
He's a super nice. Well, I mean, he's been a pretty nice guy, but it's clear
it's very different
that he's gaga for Jade.
He's chewing out Mookie
Pino,
in the scene right before,
and
talking about, "I'm on my last nerve with you. I'm gonna fire you." Essentially, was what he implies. Then Jade shows up, and Jade's like, "How's my brother doing?" He's like, "Oh, he's fantastic."
Right.
It's like a very different thing when Jade's there because he clearly has eyes for Jade.
Right.
And so the other slow motion scene moment is Mookie and Pino.
Right.
See what's going on with Sal and Jade.
Right.
And they don't like it.
Yeah, Mookie's basically glaring at him like, "Oh, this guy's trying to get on my sister."
Yeah.
Pino's glaring at him like, "Oh, that's why he's so nice to Mookie, because he's trying to get on his sister."
Right.
They're both upset.
And I think Pino doesn't like the idea of mixing races, and
probably not.
Yeah, so hate is all over this film. And I think that hate has all of the power, and love has very, very little power in this film. And so this radio is going, "Fight the power, fight the power, fight the power." And they don't.
No.
And they give into the power.
They cave, every one of them.
Sal picks up a bat from behind the counter and just obliterates this awesome 80s
Chrome
jukebox.
And black and
yeah.
It's got what's it called? Graphic equalizer on it and everything. Yeah, just smashes Radio Raheem's boombox to bits.
Yep.
Radio Raheem,
he grabs Sal
and yanks a grown man over a pizza counter and throws him on the floor.
And they just start beating on each other, and at this point,
yeah,
because they were going to leave for the night, Pino has put his other shirt back on,
right,
over his tank top, and now Pino, Vito, and Sal are all wearing black shirts. They are united for the first time in this film.
I thought Sal was wearing kind of more like a Hawaiian multicolor shirt.
I
remember that.
Well, he was wearing black. He was wearing black. No, he's wearing. Man, I don't know. That's a good question.
I remember it had like cactuses and like pink Cadillacs.
I know at the end he is. That's a good point. Okay, so
maybe it's
the
black
point is
with all these little graphics.
Yeah,
over. Maybe that's what's up.
Well, the point was,
yeah,
that you had these two brothers, or the brother and the father, who were wearing black this entire film.
Yeah.
And Pino was sort of going against the grain. And then at the end of the film, Pino puts the shirt on, and they become united in trying to pull Sal and Raheem apart.
Yeah.
And ultimately watching what happens to the finale, the climax of this film.
True.
The fight gets thrown outside onto the sidewalk, and the whole neighborhood's like, fight, fight. And so everybody comes running, the kids come running, mother's sister comes out of her house, the Asian people who own the new corner grocery come out.
They're Korean.
Yeah, they're Korean. That's correct.
Yeah. That's another interesting point.
Yeah.
In this movie, a lot of it is about these two businesses in what is essentially a black and Puerto Rican neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But the two businesses are white. Italian-owned and Korean-owned. And like Sweet Dick Willie and Coconut Jim, they are really upset with the fact that somebody was able to come over from Korea and within a year start a business in their neighborhood when it seems like none of them are able to get a business started.
Right.
And, I mean, that goes on all over the place.
But there is a little bit of reconciliation with the Koreans at the end.
Yeah, a little bit.
So this fight starts happening out on the sidewalk, and everybody comes running to like check it out, and people are trying to pull them away. And Raheem is on top of Sal, choking the life out of him.
Yeah.
And I get the feeling he's not going to stop until Sal's dead.
Maybe.
The police show up, and they pull Radio Raheem away by use of a nightstick around his throat.
Yeah.
Fully lifting him off the ground, where his feet are off the ground. And despite a fellow officer warning the cop that's strangling him to let up,
right,
Raheem is killed in front of everyone.
Yeah.
And the cops arrest Bugging Out, put him in a car. They grab Raheem's body and throw that in the back of a car.
Right.
It's very clear he's dead. His eyes are wide open.
Right.
And they drive away, leaving pretty much everyone just shocked and beaten. Sal is shocked. His sons are shocked. Mookie's in disbelief.
Right. And their friend from the neighborhood is now dead.
Right. Everyone knew.
Right in front of their eyes.
So the onlookers are pissed at Sal.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel like it's all his fault. He's not from the neighborhood. He was fighting with a guy that is from the neighborhood. He had been kind of giving people a hard time throughout the day.
Yeah. And
they knew this because Bugging Out had been approaching everyone saying, he gave me a hard time, I want to boycott it, help me boycott, and then nobody really wants to do that.
Yeah, everybody was like, I love Sal's Pizza, I'm not going to boycott Sal's Pizza.
But so at this point, everyone knows that he's been giving people a hard time in the neighborhood. So they look at Mookie, and Mookie is clearly at a loss for a few moments.
Right.
He's got his hand over his face, and he's rubbing his head, and
everybody's mad at the guy who puts money in his pocket.
Yep. And this is where he does the right thing. Kind of.
Well, he does what he thinks is the right thing.
He does what he thinks is the right thing, and he backs the neighborhood. So...
Well, backing the neighborhood is the right thing. His actions,
the way he backs the neighborhood,
is the wrong thing.
Right. So he goes over and grabs a garbage can. And he destroys the one thing that's giving him his happiness in the film.
Yeah.
The one route to money. The one thing he says the whole time, I got to do this. I got to earn the money. I have to do this. This is his focus the whole film.
Right.
The whole reason he stayed so late at work was to get paid.
Yep.
And he takes a garbage can and throws it into the window of the pizza place.
Pizzeria. While shouting, hate.
Right.
He shouts hate and whips the garbage can into the window. And a very small riot ensues.
Right. And I think that's another symbol of him growing up as well. Because he makes a decision despite what is his own sort of selfish self-interest.
All right.
You know, he wants this money, and he makes a decision to sort of burn that bridge, so to speak. The rest of the neighborhood goes nuts.
Yeah.
So they start trashing the place, ripping things off walls, stealing money out of the register.
Dump out all the soda.
Dump out the... Yeah, it was sad. All that soda. All that cream soda.
Dump it all out.
They throw rocks through the other windows, and Smiley comes in, lights a match, and sets the place on fire.
Yup.
Now, when the police and fire department show up, the mob is they're loud.
Yeah.
They look aggressive, but they're not doing anything aggressive at that point. They're not fighting anyone else. They're not fighting the police.
Right.
They don't throw rocks at anyone.
They're kind of just standing around.
They're just standing
the
there
fire.
yelling.
Yeah.
And watching the fire and like being happy with their work. Yet the police have the fire department turn the fire hoses on the crowd.
Right. Well, the what was it? They start putting the fire out on that's happening in the building.
Yep.
And then there's a guy with a bullhorn. He's like, "Everybody go back to your homes, blah, blah, blah. Please get back to your homes." And then he's like, "Last warning.
Yep.
Everybody get back to your homes now." And then,
a
second later, he's like, that was your chance. And the firemen just turned the hose on the crowd.
And they make a point of saying, this is our home.
Yeah, that's
You're standing
true.
at our home.
Right.
So they're at their homes. And, yeah, they turn the fire hoses on the crowds.
All too easily.
Yeah. Eventually, the streets are left with crying people and debris and garbage everywhere, like crushed paper cups and papers and stuff. And people are crying.
Mother Sister's her
crying.
No episode.
She has her no because the hate won.
Right. But Mother Sister was also the one who shouted, "Burn it down."
Yeah, she did.
Right before, before Mookie threw the garbage can.
Yeah, she succumbed to it too.
Yeah.
Sort of the only person who didn't
was probably the mayor.
The mayor. And Samuel L. Jackson's Love Daddy.
Right.
Because he's just watching the whole thing from his radio booth.
Yeah.
So
Which is why he's Love Daddy.
They didn't fight the power.
Right.
The hate won. And Mookie and his sister end up sitting on a curb in disbelief. And Sal and his boys they put them kind of behind a fence to kind of just stay back.
Right.
Don't get hurt.
The mayor stays with them even though Pino's throwing the N-word around.
Right. And with the fire almost out, Smiley goes back into Sal's and he pins the picture of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X on the wall.
Right.
They're finally on the wall.
Pins it up with Sal's Wall of Fame.
The next day, Mookie shows up and he demands his pay from Sal.
Right.
What balls?
Huge balls. Yeah, wakes up first thing in the morning. He's like, "I got to go to Sal's. I got to get paid."
Yeah.
And walks out of his girlfriend's bedroom. And she's like, if you go to Sal's, you're never coming back.
So
my Rosie Perez impression isn't that strong.
No, it's
I'll
not,
admit.
but it's funny. So he goes to get money from Sal because, after all, if they closed like he suggested, none of this would have happened.
That's true. And if Sal hadn't smashed Radio Raheem's... I mean, Raheem put the boombox on the counter.
And raised the volume.
And said, "Why don't you turn it off?"
Yeah.
Sal had every right to just reach over and hit the power button.
Right.
And not smash it with a baseball bat.
And everybody's yelling
Yeah.
in the room, and they're all yelling over the volume of the music, and they're yelling at each other. And
But then, for the first time in the movie, Sal also throws around
he
the N-word.
drops the N-bomb, yeah.
And smashes the radio.
Right.
And
so
everything goes wrong.
Had they listened to Mookie and just closed, this wouldn't happen. So I think Mookie feels like he's owed his week's pay.
Yeah.
So he goes to get his $250. They have an argument, and Sal throws $500 at him.
Right.
And he kind of does this out of spite and anger. And Mookie's like, "Here's $200 of it back. I owe you $50.
Right.
I don't want this." And he throws it back on the ground. And they both just like have this standoff. And they just kind of look at the money and they look at each other. And then they realize kind of how stupid they're being.
Mm-hmm.
And Sal sort of breaks the tension with, "It's going to be another hot day."
Yeah.
And then, of course, Mookie picks up the $200. And
He does, doesn't he?
And takes it back to Tina.
Classic Mookie.
So, Senior Love Daddy closes out the movie by dedicating a song to Radio Raheem. And at the end, we see a quote from both Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, followed by Smiley's photo of the two men shaking hands. And that's the end of the film.
there you have it.
So you've seen this movie before.
Yeah, I saw it when I was a real little kid when it first started showing up on HBO.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I sat through it a bunch of times because I was a huge Public Enemy fan.
Okay.
As a small child. And so...
Interesting.
You know, and so that certainly helped me get into the movie. Mm-hmm. And then I'd watch it, and I'd enjoy it. I almost thought it was more of a comedy as a kid, you know, because it's like there's like people breaking balls all over the place. I'm like, this is funny. Everybody's got all these funny insults for each other and stuff. And then obviously by the end of the movie, I was like, whoa, that took a turn that I did not see. And
right.
Actually a lot of bad stuff wound up happening.
Yeah. And it's interesting to go to watch a movie that's 26 years old. And then
that we haven't learned from at all as a collective nation,
right? And the constant headlines of the police going too far,
yeah.
Just racism in general in America, and the struggle for Black people specifically right now to find a voice, and the whole Black Lives Matter, and like be able to say that.
Yeah.
In unison and loudly. So going back and watching this film again now it was a really interesting experience.
Yeah.
I was up early this morning kind of worrying about the podcast, kind of going,
were you?
Yeah, it's like, I know that this is an important topic and it's an important film, and I don't want to put my foot in my mouth, and there's a lot of the same stuff that's going on. Eric Garner, for example.
Right. I remember the first posting I ever saw about the Eric Garner story was my buddy Mark had put up a picture of it when the news of that started going around, and his comment, above the shared post about it was Radio Raheem.
Yeah.
With three exclamation points, and I was like, oh man, what's this about? And then I read it, and I was like, when did that happen? Like middle 2014, and the news of it came out quite a bit later, and it's just like, have we learned nothing?
And the answer is kind of no.
Kind of no. And I think part of it is also the fact that, like, this kind of crap's been going down forever.
Sure.
But now, like, I remember a lot of people saying, like, oh, thank God 2014's over, so, like, all these wimps can stop complaining about this and that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, 2014 isn't the year that all the wimps decided to complain about things. It's the year that everybody started saying we are really fed up.
Right.
Again.
Yeah.
There were the civil rights movements in the 60s and the Watts riots, and then there was the LA riots in the 90s, and it's like, fortunately, thanks to the internet, more and more of this stuff can be brought to light. Mm-hmm. But as a result of more and more of it being brought to light, we're also saying, oh crap, there's still so much of this garbage going on.
Yeah.
And so I feel like 2014 was the year that everybody was just like, enough. Like, we're never going to stop talking about it as long as it keeps happening. Because if we stop talking about it, it's all going to keep happening.
Right.
It's crazy, that 2014. And now here we are halfway through 2015, and I don't know, wasn't there just like a couple of incidents like within the last month?
Yeah, oh yeah.
There was that bit of like LAPD a couple months ago.
The sad thing is that there's stuff every month.
Yeah, every week.
So, there's very clearly a call to acknowledge these.
Yeah.
The things that are going on right now. And I think again, like I said at the beginning, I think more so now than, any time in recent history, we have the ability to spread a message because of social media and the internet in a way that hasn't been able to be done before. So, but this movie is, like I said, very poignant, even though it's made 26 years ago.
Yeah, so if you have not watched it yet, you better sit down and watch Do the Right Thing.
I hope you watched it because we just talked about it.
Right. But, there's still plenty that we didn't mention that happens in the movie.
Sure, yeah. We did.
Like the fire hydrant.
Sure, the police
bit.
show up in the fire hydrant scene. The
But
guy, the Boston guy.
What's funny about that is, okay, so the fire hydrant scene is, it's a hot day in New York City, and in a lot of cities when it's a hot day, kids will bust open a fire hydrant and spray water all over the place and dance around and get cooled off. So these kids are doing that. This guy pulls up in a nice convertible Cadillac.
It's an antique.
From like the 60s. But rather than just kind of wait or maybe just say, hey, you guys, can I drive by real quick? He's instantly like...
aggressive.
Like, hey, you better not spray this car. This car's an antique. You better not effing spray this car, damn it. And they're like, oh, no, you'll be fine. Which was nice of them to say, but then as soon as he drives within range, they spray it. And it's like, if they had... But then when the cops show up for that, they're almost more on the neighborhood side.
Yeah,
because this guy's being such a jerk that they're almost more like, oh, sure, who are they? Where are the kids that did it? Point them out. Because they know the kids ran off.
Right, and I think...
And they're giving him a hard time.
I think that goes with all of the characters in this film, including the cops. The cops aren't just bad guys in this. The cops aren't bad guys in this film. They do something bad in the film. One of them does. But, just like in reality, when some bad cops do something bad, doesn't mean that all cops do things that are bad.
Certainly not. I've met plenty of good cops, I would say.
So, this film, that's kind of the next thing I was going to talk about, is sort of the beauty of the film, contrary to a lot of Spike Lee's modern stuff.
Yeah.
It's very, very fair in its indictment of the characters.
Yeah.
All of the races are treated equally in this.
That's true.
And how they're seen.
Yeah, and how they have that sort of monologue montage where, like, Mookie goes on a rant about whites and Italians, and then it cuts to Pino going on a rant about blacks, and then the Puerto Rican guy goes on a rant about the Korean guy, and the Korean guy goes on a rant about, I think, what does the Korean
Jews?
guy?
I think he says Jews.
He goes on a rant about Jews, and then there's another guy. Is it one of the cops that goes on a rant about somebody? I forget.
Puerto Ricans. He goes on a rant
Somebody
about
does,
Puerto Ricans.
yeah, that's right. Okay.
The cop that kills Radio Raheem.
He's ranting about the Puerto Rican guys.
Yeah, and...
so basically the movie and the characters are equal opportunity offenders, I guess you could say.
And the interesting thing about that scene is that it ends with Senior Love Daddy, and his rant is about peace.
That's true.
His rant is to stop all of this nonsense and talk about peace.
Right.
So, going back to how these characters are all seen fairly equally, there's definitely this whole battle between love and hate, and how one block in Brooklyn can kind of represent America.
Yeah.
And some places, of course, seem less racist, although they probably aren't. And some seem more racist. But the intent is, I think, to show how this melting pot of America can bubble over really easily. And I think that's the sort of... Obviously, there's a literal heat in the film, but also this figurative heat that causes this to bubble over. And sometimes we do the right thing in the wrong way, kind of like what Mookie does.
Yeah.
He does the right thing in the wrong way. And... we get to see him go to a crossroad and watch him choose what he thinks is the right thing at the cost of what makes him the most happy.
Right.
And I think that strikes a lot of chords with people. I think it's really easy to see yourself in bits and pieces of these characters, both characters that do good things and characters that do bad things in the film, or not necessarily bad things, but, not great things. The way maybe people talk to each other, or spraying down that guy's car, or whatever. They're not the right thing, but they're not also evil either. So it's easy to see. When I was a kid, I got dared to kick a light in somebody's like Christmas display.
Okay,
I did it.
Oh,
I shouldn't have done it.
Kick out a light in a Christmas display.
Yeah, they had like these milk cartons over these lights, and somebody was like, "Go kick it!" And so I kicked it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say who told me to do it.
But he's dead now.
No, not dead.
Oh,
and I guess my point is, we all do dumb stuff.
Sure,
we all do things that we regret, like spraying that guy's car.
Man, I have a very funny story that's very
Are you
poignant for this now that I think about it.
willing to tell it?
Sure.
Okay, go
because
for it.
the statute of limitations passed over about twice. Let's just say when I was about 12 years old, there was a bit of a prank call scandal in the neighborhood one day. And on that day, the police were in my living room. I think my parents weren't home at the time. It was late in the afternoon. The police are in my living room talking about, yeah, we're pretty sure we know it was you and blah, blah, blah. And as this is happening, on my TV, the LA riots are starting on CNN.
Wow.
My brother and I were chilling at home because, like I said, we both grew up really into hip-hop, so we were very paying attention to the news around that whole thing. And I'm in my living room getting chewed out by the police, and the LA riots are just starting on television. And my brother and I are just looking at each other like, what the heck is this about? Weird way to spend an afternoon, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
So let's talk a little bit more about the film and sort of the impact that it had as well, and sort of what it was known for.
All right.
So the movie was nominated for an Academy Award.
It was.
It was for Best Screenplay, but it lost.
Interesting. What did it lose to?
It lost to Dead Poets Society.
Oh, Dead Poets Society.
Now, when you think about both of those films, there's a very clear contrast between those two films.
Absolutely.
They're very, very different. But they're both kind of, in their own way, coming-of-age films.
Sure.
Really, really clear coming-of-age film for Dead Poets Society, but it's also for Mookie, as we've talked about. It's, he's an adult, but he's not a grown-up, and we watch him sort of make some decisions that sort of solidify this idea of what he needs to do.
Right. Wow, lost to Dead Poets Society. Speaking of screenplay, I've often thought this movie should be turned into a stage play.
Do the right thing.
I Googled the phrase, do the right thing, stage play, and it looks like there was some talk back in 2012 and again in 2014 of Spike Lee bringing Do the Right Thing to Broadway. I wasn't able to find conclusively whether he did or not. I feel like I would have heard if he had.
Sure.
But, talk about a movie that could very easily be adapted for stage.
Right.
Do the Right Thing, it is.
Right.
And what stinks is, frankly, it should be done in every high school around America, if not even younger, but there's so much swearing in it. They'd have to get rid of a whole lot of swearing if they want to show it to the kids.
Well, so I want to talk a little bit more about the nomination.
Yeah.
And Dead Poets Society and kids,
all right,
especially, because that's one of the things that Dead Poets Society deals with, these prep kids.
Yeah.
One of these films is predominantly an all-white cast.
Oh, yeah.
One of them is a very mixed color melting pot, like we've sort of discussed. When you go and you look at the crew, again, one of these is a very stark white crew. And one of these is kind of goes back to that melting pot.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that Do the Right Thing is better than Dead Poets Society.
Fair enough.
But it's hard to articulate this.
I get what you're saying.
But I think that Do the Right Thing is incredibly important as a film. And the interesting thing is, even if Dead Poets Society is a better film, let's say Dead Poets Society came out a year later, I still don't think Spike Lee wins the Academy Award for Do the Right Thing. My guess is When Harry Met Sally would have gotten it.
Oh, When Harry Met Sally. Hi, Lisa.
I think
a friend of mine was in that.
Oh, okay. I think that When Harry Met Sally is probably the greatest written romantic comedy.
It's pretty good.
To date, with It Happened One Night as a really close second.
All right.
And the reason why I don't think it would win is because the film was incredibly divisive.
Okay.
Amongst critics and people in the country, all of a sudden there was a lot of talk about this movie. It had a big buzz at Cannes, and there's this talk that Sally Field was one of the jurors, and she fought really hard for that to be an award winner at Cannes, and
for Do the Right Thing.
To
be an award winner.
Yep. And she apparently had a really tough fight, a really tough sell. And when it was released, and because of that, there was a lot of talk about it in the U.S., and there was a lot of, it brought up a lot of things in the media, and people were really, really divided about it. And people saw it as a call for racial disharmony.
Interesting.
Yeah.
A call for racial
disharmony. And I think part of that is when you look at Pino saying, we should go back to our neighborhood. They don't want us here. They're animals. What do they do at the end of the film? They completely tear down this restaurant. They almost kill them. They almost kill Sal. And they completely destroy his business that he worked so hard to build with his own bare hands. But Pino's not right.
Right.
And he's certainly not right calling them animals. But the point is that I can understand how people can misconstrue that as being immoral to this.
Yeah.
And I think that says more about the writers than it does the movie. And the people reporting that and their personal views. I think it says a lot about them.
Okay.
Richard Corliss wrote a pretty negative review in Time, and he says, quote, Lee cagily provides a litmus test for racial attitudes in 1989, but he does so by destroying the integrity of his characters, black and white.
Huh.
How do you feel about that?
Read it again.
Lee cagily provides a litmus test for racial attitudes in 1989, but he does so by destroying the integrity of his characters, black and white. Do you feel like the integrity of the characters is destroyed by the...
In a way.
Not the... Let me go on. Because I think he misses the point.
Sure.
It's not a matter of... like a clear matter of black and white, no pun intended. Because he goes on to say that the film and its characters are contradictory. And that's what he means by destroying the integrity. Okay. He doesn't mean that the inside emotional integrity of these characters and their development was destroyed.
Yeah.
He says that the characters are contradictory and that that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
That they shouldn't contradict, their motives shouldn't contradict themselves throughout the film. And I think that sort of misses the point that... A, we all have mixed feelings about life.
Right.
And what's right and wrong. And B, sometimes we do the wrong thing even though our intentions are right. And sometimes we change our mind about things.
Yeah.
And that's real. And he sort of gets on their case for having the characters be fluid. You know, for example, Mookie changes his attitude about what he wants and what he stands up for, what he believes in. And... why, I don't understand why there's such a problem with that.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering if he might only be... because the only one that really doesn't make sense is Sal. Because Sal goes on and on about how he loves this neighborhood. These kids grew up on his food. He's watched them. He's watched the old people get older. He's watched the kids turn into adults. He loves this neighborhood. He's proud of this place, this and that. And then it's like for him to just switch so quickly then... when he's about to smash Radio Raheem's boombox and start throwing the N-word around.
Well, I don't think it's quick.
I think it's pretty quick.
I'll tell you why I don't think it's quick. There's a clear lack of respect for Sal throughout the whole film.
True.
Sal tells Pino to do something, and Pino doesn't do what he's supposed to do. He tells someone else to do it.
Yeah.
And then when that person doesn't do it, he tells someone else to do it. And he constantly is getting backtalk from his son.
Yeah.
And they're constantly bickering, and there's constantly this pressure building. And Sal is getting no respect from his own family.
Yeah.
And then the customers come in, and they don't give him respect. And I think throughout the film, and I'm not justifying his actions, I'm saying what I think his character goes through, and the progression that I saw is that just like the heat bubbling over for other people, the heat bubbles up for Sal in a very different way. And I think throughout the film, he's clinging to, I love this neighborhood because I love this thing that I built.
Okay.
And I think there are things about the neighborhood that he loves. Like he lets those kids come in at the end,
right?
And he tells Pino when they have that conversation, and Pino's like, my friends laugh at me because I work in this neighborhood, and we shouldn't be here, and it's not our kind. And he's like, those aren't your friends if they're laughing at you. Do they put food on your table? Do they pay for your school? Do they put money in your pocket? And he's telling Pino that it's the people of this neighborhood that do that. He's not saying I put money
Right.
food on your table. He's saying the people that you're calling animals.
Right.
Yes, there are some bad ones, and he tells them that. But ultimately, there are a lot of people who love Sal's Pizzeria and love their people. And he talks about how I've watched their kids grow up into adults, and there's something that he's really truly connected to in this city or in this neighborhood that he loves. That doesn't change the fact that on this day he gets pushed and pushed and pushed by everyone, including his own family. And in that last scene with the radio blaring of Fight the Power and the song that he is driving him nuts all day.
Yeah.
He's got Radio Raheem yelling at him. He's got Smiley yelling at him. He has Bugging Out yelling at him. He has all four of the teenagers yelling at him. He has both of his sons yelling, and Mookie's yelling. Everybody is yelling in that room, and I think he snaps. I think he loses it in that moment. And I don't think it comes out of nowhere. I personally feel that we saw the progression of this throughout the day.
Yeah, I'm not saying the snap isn't right, but I'm saying, like, it seems very out of character for him to suddenly start throwing the M-word around and decide he's going to smash this thing rather than just rise above it like he's risen above so much else and shut the radio off. I mean, we're talking about something as simple as shutting the radio off.
I think he just loses that fight in that moment. And, you know, have you ever been at somebody's house or been and seen this happen, or been on the receiving end of this, where you have a vehement disagreement with someone and they're like, you come into my home and you argue with me and you tell me that I'm the wrong person in my home?
Yeah.
Get out of my home.
Oh, I've had that argument.
That's happening to him throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
The whole movie. And in this last moment, he's already told this guy, you can't have the music on in here if you're going to be in here. And the guy turned the music off earlier in the film. And now he comes back, not just with the music on, but with the music turned way up.
Yeah.
And yelling at him and demanding something that he thought was already put to rest. This is my wall. I'll do what I want with it. And so they come into his home. And I think there's this territorial, like,
oh, sure,
this, and with all of the other things that were added into it. I mean, that's just my take. I can see kind of what you're saying, but you know, even if it was, let's benefit of the doubt. Let's say Sal doesn't make sense. I think it does, but let's say it doesn't. Do you feel like the other characters and their motivations don't make sense?
No, I think they all make sense. I think Sal is the one that's the only inconsistent one. But yeah, I think everything else makes perfect sense. So I really don't know what he's talking about.
So I feel like Richard Corliss is kind of out of touch with sort of the point of the film.
Yeah.
You know, maybe, you know, I don't want to be like, oh yeah, here's like this middle-aged white guy writing a review that doesn't understand the film about race relations. But that's kind of, you know, later on in the same review, he says, quote, "In Hollywood, the black man's burden is to be all things to all people. Stoic Sidney Poitier and sassy Eddie Murphy, angelic sitcom kid and fuming rap master." He seems like an incredibly out of touch guy to me.
Sounds that way.
Another writer, Dave Kerr from the Chicago Tribune, called it a piece of political propaganda. And he asks us, quote, "How is racial violence justified?"
That's a fair question.
But
I feel like that movie shows that, you know, A, kind of it's not, but B, we can understand it in that moment there after Radio Raheem's been murdered by the police.
Right. So he calls the film dangerous and irresponsible. Unlike Corliss, Kerr complains about having the characters that have contradicting motives at times. But unlike Corliss, he says he wants that type of complexity.
All right.
So he chastises Lee because Kerr is mad that people have seen that Lee has these kind of complex characters, and some people are lavishing praise on this, going, oh, look at this original piece of work, and these characters are complex, and their motivations are not always clear, and it's fluid. And he gets mad that people are praising Spike Lee over this.
Yeah. Huh.
He says, it's depressing to see how much credit Lee has been given simply for painting his characters in shades other than purely good and purely evil, as if the gesture reflected anything other than an appreciation for a basic human truth.
Huh.
We seem to be so accustomed to one-dimensional caricature under these politically charged circumstances that we're astonished and delighted to find anything else. Sad is the day when even a stab at complexity becomes the amazing exception rather than the expected norm. So he gives the film a bad review, and he complains that Lee does this thing that he thinks it should be in all film, and it's the exact same thing that Richard Corliss complains about. And I think this is, and the reason I bring these two up, whether you agree or disagree with what they're saying, the point is that Spike Lee was damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
You know? And I think people clung to these ideas that they didn't fully understand. And I think they didn't want to see Lee do well.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt that for a second. Are you kidding me? We're talking Bush era entertainment industry. Who knows? They probably didn't want to see him do well.
Sure.
Especially making a movie that really throws issues in our face,
Yeah. And I think it goes to show that there's, the movie goes to show that there's racial biases all over our country in every neighborhood. And these reviews, these negative reviews, and sort of the divisiveness over the film shows that there's these same biases in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I do think that's changing now. And whether people like Spike Lee or not, I have very conflicted feelings about Spike Lee. But Spike Lee and Do the Right Thing had a really direct influence on the change that's happening in Hollywood. I think he opened the door for black directors. John Singleton did the amazing film Boys in the Hood.
Sure.
The Hughes brothers, who did Menace to Society.
Oh, yeah.
Lee Daniels, who did Push and The Butler.
Push?
Yeah, the novel by Sapphire.
Wait.
Push.
The movie was Precious.
Precious, I'm sorry.
That's where I got confused.
But the book is Push.
The book is Push.
I apologize.
The movie's Precious.
The movie is Precious.
I got confused.
Anton Fuqua, who did Training Day.
Oh, yeah.
Tyler Perry. We're not going to go too much into that, but he definitely opened a door for Tyler Perry.
A lot of movies.
Yep. Casey Lemons, who did what I think is the incredibly underrated Caveman's Valentine. And Eve's Bayou. Ava DuVernay,
not watched Eve's Bayou,
who did Selma.
All right.
F. Gary Gray, who I think has a shot at winning an Oscar, or at least a nomination this year for Straight Outta Compton.
Nice.
But think about all those films that I just said.
Yeah.
And all those black directors. I chose each one of those films very, very specifically to make a point about racial ideas in Hollywood. Right. And I think there's an assumption about the type of stories black filmmakers make. So listeners, can you name some of the other movies that those directors made? So we talked about Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, Selma.
Yeah.
The Butler, Eve's Bayou, Training Day.
I mean, I can name some, but I'm not a listener.
Sure. So let's mention Paperboy.
Paperboy, right.
Nicole Kidman and Zac Efron.
Right.
From Hell.
Oh, yeah.
Johnny Depp.
Who was that? That was the Hughes brothers, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tears of the Sun. Bruce Willis.
The Sun.
King Arthur.
Wait, who directed King Arthur? Antoine Fuqua?
That one was...
The suspense is killing me.
Oh, I lost it here. I just lost my notes. Sorry about that.
What about Singleton did the Shaft remake?
Yeah,
Samuel Jackson.
But the point I was trying to make, The Italian Job, is another really good example. You know, there's an assumption that black filmmakers make black films.
Yeah,
and that's sort of what I wanted to address, because I don't think people think of, Anton Fuqua as doing King Arthur.
Right.
they don't think, oh, Training Day guy did that.
Right.
So I just kind of wanted to just bring in this idea because without Spike Lee, who came before all of those people,
yeah,
I mean, he really opened a door, and I think Do the Right Thing was a big piece of opening that door.
Sure.
So,
absolutely.
Race.
And heat waves.
Yeah, it's funny. It's really, really hot where we are. It's the hottest day of the year here, and we watched a movie about the hottest day of the year in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So
Straight Outta Compton opened last night.
Yeah, that's hot.
What's going to happen tonight? Hopefully nothing. Did you see this BS in the news?
What's that?
About, what was it? Something like Regal Cinemas. Maybe don't quote me on that. It might not have been Regal Cinemas. But some big movie theater chain was like shelling out so many millions of dollars so that movie theaters could hire extra security for Straight Outta Compton opening night. Like just expecting people to pop off.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
I think it goes back to like racial. I mean, freaking people got shot in Batman.
Exactly.
We talked about that before. I mean, it's not like
Dark Knight Rises.
It's not really a movie that I think about.
People got shot at Trainwreck.
Right. Yeah, the Amy Schumer movie.
For crying out loud.
So, I mean, I think it's, again, this bias against, black filmmakers and black casts and complex, difficult stories that represent a true and real culture in America and a struggle in America.
Huh.
So that was Do the Right Thing. I hope this podcast went okay.
I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you watched the movie or are about to watch it.
Yep. And
show it to your kids, because I watched this movie as early as 10, maybe even 9.
There are some boobs in the movie, and there's a lot of swearing.
One pair, which means 2 boobs. There's a lot of swearing.
A lot of swearing. So a couple of N-bombs and a lot of F-bombs. A lot.
You know what boobs and swearing are? Reality.
No, yeah. Look, I don't have a problem with what you're saying. I'm just letting people know.
Letting the parents know.
Yeah, maybe your 8-year-old
maybe
should not see the movie.
Cover their eyes.
I mean, your kids.
They're hearing exactly. A, they're already looking, and B, they're already hearing. So they might as well see it and hear it with like a real message attached.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening. If you want to tweet at us, you can tweet at Steve in NoHoWood or at Movie Hippo or at No Lag Gamers. Don't forget to hashtag either career opportunities or Breakfast Club. I have definitely seen some Breakfast Club hashtags already.
Oh, I have not.
They are winning. Breakfast Club is
I'm sure
winning
Breakfast
the war.
Club's going to win. I love it.
The Great John Hughes Battle of 2015 rages on. And
we've got a name now.
We do have a name now.
We don't have to use that hashtag anymore. We are now View the Right Thing, but I don't care what you say. I'm still pushing for Indiana Jaws. I think that one day the revolution on this podcast here is going to happen.
I don't know. We'll see.
Indiana Jaws.
I don't think it's going to happen. But so tune in next week for The Apartment and Annie Hall.
And Annie Hall.
Thanks for listening. Bon Cinema.